Good morning, everyone, and welcome to County Executive Stuart Pittman's regular weekly press conference that's formally known as the media call. And thanks everyone for joining us on Facebook Live. I'm the Public Information Officer for County Executive Pittman, and I'll be moderating the media part of this, the Q&A. We'll get started this morning with an update from the County Executive, and he'll be followed by Dr. Nilesh Kalyanaraman, our top doc and the county's health officer.
All right, thank you, Ross, and thank you for joining us, everybody. We do have some news having to do with restrictions, but I want to start out by talking about vaccinations and how that's been going. I hear from a lot of residents the frustration with knowledge that we're allowed to move into 1C, phase 1C, residents over 65 as of this week, and that, but at the same time, that we're only doing 5,000 doses through the Department of Health and have a limited supply. And it's been a very confusing, difficult time for folks. There are multiple places now to be able to go to get vaccinated and different sites where people can sign up. And we wish that were not the case. We would love to have one central pre-registration and then feed people to the different sites. That's not being allowed at this point. The actual registrations go through Prep Mod for the county Department of Health registrations. The hospitals use another system called Epic, and then we have pharmacies involved too. So it's been a difficult time, and I think it's going to get better. I hope it will get better. I actually have a meeting with the governor tomorrow to talk about ways that we can coordinate better, and that's going to be very important. But in Anne Arundel County, we have 100,000 of our residents who have pre-registered at aacounty.org/COVIDVax, and please continue to register there. However, we were only allocated 3,000 doses this week. We were able to get an additional 2,000 doses that will be transferred by our friends at Anne Arundel Medical Center. I called them the heroes of the week this week for agreeing to do that because they had a large increase in their allocation while we had a decrease. We waited to sign people up until Saturday, but then we didn't get our allocation notice until Saturday evening. So you can imagine how fast these slots fill up when we have 100,000 people waiting. But I want to commend our Department of Health staff for doing the really hard work of increasing the capacity, building the infrastructure to be able to not only get out 5,000 doses in a week, but they request each week 7,500 and are capable of more. We have additional sites ready to open, and they're doing a fantastic job under these circumstances. And other departments of county government as well have been doing hard work. Department of Aging has been doing phone calls, hundreds and hundreds of phone calls with seniors, especially having trouble getting through the system and need help with the technology, as well as people from our office and all over county government who've been taking these calls and helping people through the process. There is a movement at the state level to move toward private providers. And that was, we got a notice of that back at the end of last week, saying that this week, Giant and Walmart would be added to the list. And next week, Safeway and Rite Aid would be added to the list. We support that, but I do have some thoughts about how that could be done better. The data that the state puts out shows that pharmacies actually have gotten out 55.6% as of the last report that I've gotten of their first doses, whereas hospitals have gotten out 71.7%, and statewide local health departments have gotten out 79.3%. So these health departments are efficient at getting these vaccinations into people's arms, and the private sector players, we believe, will get better. But they have some work to do to catch up. In Anne Arundel County, our Department of Health has gotten 84.1% of the doses that we've gotten of first doses into people's arms. And those numbers vary when we get our new allocations. So the number looks better towards the end of the week than at the beginning. But we've done well in the county. We're the 5th largest population, but we've had the 3rd highest number of doses administered by health department. So what we need to improve this system, in my view, and this is what I will talk to the governor about and make suggestions, is that privatization, I believe, is an excellent move as the supply grows, as we have more vaccines. But right now we have local health departments that have created the capacity with taxpayers' funds and more additional funds coming to be able to do that. And they are able to do this with a strategic plan for the whole county, with an equity lens. And we believe that right now, with the limited numbers of doses, that local health departments should be prioritized. And then when we do add additional providers, that it should be coordinated, that there should be one sign-up place so that folks don't have to shop around the way they're doing right now. I know a lot of people spent most of their day yesterday trying to get through on the Giant site that was crashing. One person emailed me and told me they spent 7 hours trying to register with Giant. And people are, of course, registering everywhere because people are really frustrated and want to get these vaccines, and so they go everywhere. So a centralized system in each county would be fantastic. A centralized system in the whole state would be great, and we all need to work together to make that happen, and I hope that we'll be able to do that. Now on to the good news, which is that case rates have dropped to 38.3 7-day average today, and hospitalizations are starting to drop as well. We have 138, according to the data that I have that came out this morning in our 2 hospitals combined of COVID patients. And we have in our hospital system in Anne Arundel County between our 2, 636 beds. So that's still a lot of COVID patients to add to the regular workload, but it's much better than what was projected earlier. There was a time where numbers were coming out, projections that in our system, we could have as many as 920 COVID patients. Then it came down to 550. Then it went down to 245. And the fact that we're at 138 and most people are projecting that it will continue to drop, that's the most important thing to me, is being able to manage in our hospital system the COVID patients. And then the case rates coming down as well. I mean, we were at 62 at the height of our spike. Cases per 100,000 population over 7-day average. And even though 38 is a big number, it's much higher than we were at in the summer. It's a much better place than we were. So if you remember back in November 20th and then December 16th, we put in new restrictions to deal with the fall surge. And we believe that the way the numbers have moved and the way that they're projected to continue moving, that we can now lift the restrictions, most of the restrictions that were put in place to deal with the fall surge. We are going to have a new executive order tomorrow and a press release with the details of that. But I can tell you that it will include moving most of the businesses that are at 25% capacity restriction to 50%. So that would include restaurants and then establishments that are closed right now getting to 25%. We're looking at sports as well. But the reason over the next 24 hours, we're talking to stakeholders. Our Office of Law and our health department and my team are all looking at some of the details of that to be able to get it all down into a new executive order for tomorrow. And then it will take effect on Friday at 5 p.m. I do want to say, however, that there's a risk in doing this, and that the projections of things dropping are based on people's behavior not changing. So we must continue to do carry out. aacounty.org/carryout is the place to go with all the menus at our great restaurants. State restrictions will still be in place, so 10 o'clock closures and table distancing and not standing at the bars are all still in place. And then, of course, if our numbers go up, we'll have to go back and we'll have to respond. If a new variant of COVID starts to spread more quickly, then I think you'll see action at the county and the state level. But I am thrilled that we can start moving in this direction. We know that our businesses that have been affected by these most recent restrictions that we put in place in the fall know how to operate as safely as possible. They know that we're going to enforce the existing restrictions, and they want to keep their employees and their customers safe. And so we trust that they will continue to do the hard work, and all of our residents will continue to do the hard work and make the sacrifices to keep these numbers down. So I just want to end by saying there are a few other things going on. Economic development is working on almost ready to get out additional assistance to restaurants, another $3 million of state money from Commerce. They've worked out the contracts for that, as well as $5 million for hotels. So that will be coming soon. You will be invited to, if you're in the press, you'll be invited to a press conference on Friday at 11 that Economic Development is doing, that I will be joining to announce a new program called Inclusive Ventures, which I'm very excited about. I want to thank our police department for their work last Wednesday. It was a cold day in Washington, D.C. and here in the Capitol as well, helping to ensure a peaceful transfer of power. And I want to thank Department of Public Works for treating our roads last night and keeping them from being too slick this morning. Budget town halls are going on. We had one last night, and we have 2 more this week, tomorrow night and Thursday night. And the final thing, I like to look forward far into the future, and I know that it's a healthy thing to do at a time like this. Anne Arundel County's Plan 2040, our general development plan, is going to the County Council on Monday. And I look forward to having those conversations with our council members about our general development plan and land use for the future in Anne Arundel County. So back to you, Raz. Or over to you, Nilesh, whichever it is. Dr. Kalyana Raman, thank you.
Thank you, County Executive. So I just want to go through our data where we are this week, as I usually do. This week we saw our case rate down to 39 from a high in the mid-60s 2 weeks ago. This is the effect of the restrictions we put into place in mid-December. So the spike after the holidays was temporary, not sustained, because it was related to people gathering. But the only other time we've seen this 2-week decrease in cases was actually in August, when we put restrictions into effect at that time. This is what the effect of restrictions looks like. It does take a little time to show up, but it has. And so that we're seeing our percent positivity come down 7.8% compared to 9.1% the week prior. Our hospitalizations are coming down in the 130s now from being in the 150s. Our deaths are still going to be high for at least another few weeks. They lag. It takes a while for those to start coming down again. They were 22 last week. And our projections are showing that we're at or near the peak hospitalization for the state. And as I mentioned, in our county, we're starting to see them go down a little bit. Our goal, when we said this, was to avoid overwhelming our hospitals. And it looks like we're achieving that. Which is why the county executive is talking about relaxing the restrictions. We've done what we need to do and keep our hospitals intact. It's critical that everybody keeps masking, distancing, and avoiding gatherings, and that's true even if you get vaccinated. We're not out of the woods. One thing we do know is that only about 10% of Marylanders have actually had COVID, and those are based on what we call seroprevalence studies or antibody studies that the CDC puts out. That means there's a lot of people who haven't gotten COVID yet. And we've only vaccinated approximately 5 to 6% of our population. There's a lot of people who are still susceptible. So while there's a lot of hope, we still have to keep going at this for a while, particularly until we get to spring and we can get people outside. In terms of vaccines, we continue to vaccinate. The number one question that we get is, when can I get mine? The number two is, why is it going so slowly? So in terms of the first one, when can I get mine? Really encourage everybody to go to our website, aahealth.org, and you can sign up to pre-register for a vaccine. It does not mean you're going to get an appointment right away. It simply tells us you're interested, and then when it's your turn, your phase, we will contact you. One thing we do want to emphasize is that it takes weeks, if not months, to go through each of the phases. there's a lot of people in these phases. And that gets to the second question of why is it so slow? It's because there's limited vaccine. We at the health department are getting out all the vaccine that we get. We get it once a week, and we put it into arms over the course of that week. And by the time we get to the next week, we only have a few hundred doses left, and we continue that so that we can consistently have vaccine appointments available throughout the week. Health departments are good at mass vaccinations. That's what we do, and we're doing it. And to what the county executive was saying, while we still have limited doses, we think it's really important to continue utilizing the local health departments to keep pumping out vaccine. And as we get more, then I think it makes more sense to start putting it into other providers' hands. They're going to be a cornerstone of our approach. But spreading it out really thinly now, I don't think makes it easier. It makes it a little bit harder to get it into arms, because that means people have to figure out now how to navigate a lot of different systems. In our county, that's us, both the hospitals, and in our conversations with them, they've made it clear that for BWMC, they're part of University of Maryland, which has one large system, and Anne Arundel Medical Center is part of Luminous, which is two hospitals across two large counties. We all have the same goal, which is to get shots in arms of people who are in this phase. But we all have to do that in slightly different ways. Each of the hospital systems serves slightly different populations. And so navigating that is challenging for people. It's challenging for us to be able to coordinate. That's why we have conversations with our hospital partners more than once a week to coordinate vaccinations, to make sure that we're synced up on the phases, and to share lists as needed so that we are most efficiently vaccinating people. Right now, we're in phase 1B. We're vaccinating 75-year-olds. Once we get enough vaccine to vaccinate all the 75-year-olds who want to get vaccinated, we will then be ready to do educators. So that's public and private school teachers and staff and childcare workers. Yesterday, we sent out letters to the private schools and to childcare facilities and workers, instructing them to pre-register on our website so that as soon as we have the vaccine, we can contact them for appointments. We're anticipating it'll take at least another week, maybe two. It depends entirely on the supply. So everything I say is dependent on how much vaccine we get each week. And then, of course, we've talked about the fact that ACPS will be, while they'll be vaccinated by the fire department, the vaccine supply itself is still part of our larger pot of vaccines we get for the county. So they'll be done. We'll start with ACPS at the same time we start with private schools and childcare workers. We also had our health equity, our monthly health equity meeting yesterday. We discussed issues around vaccine hesitancy and reaching the minority community, answering questions, and this is going to be a cornerstone. One of the things that we've certainly seen is that proportionally smaller number of minorities have gotten the vaccine. A large part of that is related to the fact that the professions that have really gotten priority initially, healthcare workers, first responders, have a lower proportion of minorities. So by going to those groups, we're naturally going to get more whites, fewer blacks, fewer Hispanics. But particularly when we start hitting their age-based groups, it's going to be key to be able to do that outreach, address hesitancy, and it's not a one-time thing; it's an ongoing thing. It's a daily thing to be able to reach out, answer questions, and engage with people on that. So we are looking at, in the same way we did the community pop-ups we are doing the community pop-ups for testing. We're going to be doing community pop-ups for vaccinations as well to reach underserved communities and make sure that vaccinations are getting to those hands. Along that line, we're also working with the housing authorities in both Annapolis and the county and Department of Aging to make sure that we're getting senior housing and public housing and getting them vaccinated over the course of the next few weeks to month, and making sure that we get those vulnerable residents. Last week, we did vaccinations in the homeless shelters to staff and residents to continue that target of vulnerable populations. And that's my, those are my points for today. So back over to you, Russ.
Thank you, Dr. Nilesh. Let's start with Mr. Don Harrison from WMAR.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, either for the doctor or county executive, talk to me about the concerns. Are there still concerns from minority and others that are worried about getting this vaccine because of maybe past practices?
So we've certainly heard that. That's part of our call. Our meeting yesterday was to talk a little bit about that. Some of that hesitancy that's rooted historically in what's happened in medicine and public health, and to talk about what those issues are. One of the things that I think is really important about the trials in Moderna and Pfizer, they included African Americans and Hispanics, about 9% African Americans, 20 to 26%, depending on the study, Hispanics, which is a lot greater representation than has historically happened in vaccine trials. So, I mean, I think that having these conversations and talking about those disparities allows us to correct for them. It's not gonna happen overnight, but we need to keep talking about it and understanding what those issues are and addressing them.
As this process goes and your counseling goes as well, have you noticed attitudes changing? Are them being more receptive to it through this process?
You know, it's a little hard to tell right now just because we're in such early times, and the bulk of the vaccination has been targeted towards professions or congregate settings. And so I think something that's going to particularly reveal itself. One of the things we note is that in the 75 and over category, because Blacks have a lower life expectancy, there are just fewer people in that category who are minorities. The demographics of our population is such that we don't have a lot of older Hispanics. So I don't think we have a great fix on whether attitudes are changing or not yet. But that's definitely something that we want to understand and see happening.
Thank you, Doctor.
Next, we're going to Jane Miller.
Good morning. I have a question to both the county executive and Dr. K, kind of along the same topic. First of all, to the county executive, for clarity here, you seem to be suggesting a much more centralized system of distribution. Is this something do you think the state of Maryland could be doing more to ease the process of distribution?
Yeah, particularly pre-registration. So I completely support getting as many providers as possible doing the vaccinations as we get the supply increased, and we trust that will happen. But it's been very difficult for residents to have to pre-register at multiple sites. And once you pre-register, then you wait, and then you get called when there's space. So there could be one central pre-registration site from which the various providers get lists. So that's what I'm suggesting. And I'm suggesting that right now, when we have very limited supply, the local health departments be given the priority, because they are the ones in every county that are putting together the strategy with the equity lens and with an eye to public health in general.
Do you have any response to the governor's comment about Dr. K?
Yeah, I did respond to that already. I believe he does know what he's talking about. He's on the front lines and he's doing great work in this county.
Thank you.
Next, John Frenaye, Eye on Annapolis.
Hi, this is for Dr. Colin Arman, I guess. With the lack of a centralized booking system, as we said, and I know Jane and Don sort of mentioned this, will we have an accurate representation of how many residents of the county, I guess you can extend it out to the state, have been actually vaccinated? Will we know who has and hasn't?
Well, we do know how many people have been vaccinated. So we on our dashboard on our website have that information. So we've had 33,000 county residents vaccinated. Vaccinations, 29,000 first dose, 3,500 second dose. Our health department has done 15,000 doses, the vast majority of first doses, and the state is sharing similar data. I think what we don't have as good insight into is how many people are pre-registered because they are in all these different systems, right? Health departments have their systems, hospitals have their systems. The pharmacies are now standing up their registration systems. And so it just creates a lot of duplication for those who are able to figure it out, and challenge for those who are not.
Okay. And another question, I looked at the case rate and the positivity trends on the state COVID dashboard.
Mhm.
And if you look back to April, it looks like Anne Arundel County really has been mimicking the state levels, the whole, the peaks and the valleys and everything else. Does that necessarily mean that the additional restrictions that we took, because we were a lot more restricted than the state during various parts of that, were necessarily for naught, or would our rates have been that much higher had we not done that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So what you'll also see is that we tend to act in concert with other large counties. And so what you see is that those counties constitute a majority of the population in Maryland. And so I think by proxy, we are putting into effect the changes with those other counties that are shifting the course of how the state's case rate is going.
Okay.
And when you look at sorry. Well, when you look at the counties that have the highest case rates, they're the counties that generally have the least restrictions too. The rural counties have had fewer restrictions, and they're the highest case rate. That was not true in the beginning of the pandemic, when it was the more populated counties closer to the urban areas that had the highest case rates, but because of the density and it was spreading. But those counties have pushed their numbers down, and the others have risen.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, John. Rita Rich, WNAV Radio. Are you there, Rita? Okay, moving to Joseph Ojo, Fox 45.
Yes, first question for Dr. K. This is concerning the governor's comment. Have you spoke with him about his comments? And just another two-part question to that. Do you feel he was out of line in questioning your ability to do the job?
I haven't spoken to him. I think the county executive spoke for me, and I'm going to leave it at that.
And for the county executive, when you meet with the governor, will you be bringing up his comments towards the health officer?
No, we'll be talking about how we can get more people vaccinated more efficiently.
Far more important.
Thank you.
All right, Olivia Sanchez, the Capitol.
Good morning. Mr. County Executive, I want to ask a little bit more about the new executive order you're going to sign tomorrow. So that'll be 50% for indoor dining for restaurants. Will it change anything for outdoor dining?
That's still being worked out in conversations. So you'll know tomorrow at noon.
All right. And what about sports? Can you share anything about what you're considering for new permissions for sports?
No, just that we're considering it.
Okay, one more question. We've heard that some Anne Arundel County seniors are going over to Calvert County to get vaccinated. Do you have anything to say about this, or and do you plan to only vaccinate Anne Arundel County residents in the county?
We're not going to tell anybody not to get vaccinated if they can get it at multiple sites in the county or elsewhere. But people are being encouraged all over the state to go in their jurisdiction. And I know that some people have been turned away in other counties when they've signed up and then gotten there. Sometimes they get away with it, and sometimes they get stopped. So I would say don't count on getting vaccinated elsewhere. It varies a lot, county by county.
Thank you.
Jane, do you have an additional question?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up just to, the question that we get a lot is the same question you get. It's not just when am I going to be able to get the vaccine, but as you mentioned, what is the problem with getting it distributed? Now, we're not talking about, we know the supply is limited, but what in your view this really goes to the county executive, obviously, is what is the problem with Maryland's way at the bottom of the list in terms of actual distribution of the vaccine it gets allocated from the federal government. What's the main problem?
I don't know. I mean, I can speak for the county that we get them and we get them into people's arms within a week. I think, as I said, the percentages are lower at pharmacies in particular. And I was surprised that the state decided that they were going to shift their allocation more to the pharmacies, the ones that are having a tougher time getting them into people's arms, rather than using health departments that were doing better. So that concerns me. I think if we are going to make it happen quicker, we're going to have to direct the vaccines to the providers that can get it done efficiently. So that could be part of it, but I can't speak to what else is going on at the state level.
Thank you.
Do we have further questions from anyone that's not in the chat? All right. Go ahead.
One more question. This is Olivia from the Capitol. Mr. County Executive, you mentioned $3 million for restaurants and $5 million from hotels from the state that economic development will be administering. Is this part of the Inclusive Ventures program that you mentioned, or are these two separate things?
Separate. Okay. Inclusive Ventures is a minority business training program that we're going to be announcing.
Cool. Thank you.
Anything else?
Just a quick comment. As you were speaking, the FEMA is sending $219 million to the state of Maryland for its vaccine effort. Just announced.
Good. Let's hope it gets into the right hands.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.